is David Nethery, and I'm president of AIR4arts. Now, some of you are familiar with the Arts Incubator of Richardson. We have updated AIR and created AIR4arts. Think of us as a greenhouse for creative endeavor. For the last 2 years, AIR sponsored storytelling events. Storytelling obviously has existed for millennia as an oral tradition. Since the invention of the printing press, stories have been put in printed form, making them much more universally available. AIR4arts has created a Storytime series that will be offered on a monthly basis throughout 2021. Our Storytime series highlights the use of print media to educate, inform, and entertain. We are honored today to present a noted author who has captured the stories of many historical figures in children's books. Thank you for joining us. Now, I want to acknowledge the other people who are in the room at this time. Susan Morrow is the Executive Director for AIR4arts. Tony Portman and Laura Davis are Board Directors for AIR4arts. And we have a 6th grader, Matthew, who is Laura's son. Now, these books appeal to children of all ages, and we've tried to represent that spectrum here today. So, Susan, would you please introduce the very special star of this year's Storytime series?
Thank you, David. It is my utmost pleasure to introduce Nancy Churnin, noted American children's author. Nancy has published 8 historical and award-winning books with 2 new offerings, I understand, slated for release this October. Today, Nancy is presenting Martin and Anne, the kindred spirits of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank. Martin and Anne is the recipient of numerous awards, and 3 of the most distinguished ones are the 2020 books for a global society notable from the International Literacy Association, a civil rights and race reading list selection by the Jewish Book Council, and a 2020 Northern Lights Book Award winner in the historical category. A pleasure. Let's welcome Nancy Churnin.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you so much, David. And thank you for creating this series to bring books to children. And I think children of all ages, because I don't think we ever outgrow picture books. I know I certainly haven't. This is a very special book for me, Martin and Anne. I'm going to talk about the book. I'm not going to actually read the book, but I'm going to talk about the book. And then I'm going to answer some questions that I think are going to involve why I wrote the book and what I hope it may accomplish. Martin and Anne, the kindred spirits of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank. I am the author. It says by Nancy Churnin. The illustrator is Yevgenia Neighbor. And we're going to spend some time looking at Yevgenia's amazing illustrations. Yevgenia is also an award-winning illustrator, a Sidney Taylor Honor winner among her many, many accolades. And she did something very special with this book. We're going to spend some time on some of the pictures and talk about how they might make you feel. And some of the things you might see in the pictures that can take you to places that even words can't. Now, another thing I want to say about picture books is that for all of you who love movies, television, in many ways, a picture book is the most perfect example of that. Because like movies, like television, picture books blend visuals with words to create an impact greater than either one could make individually. I hope you'll agree with me on that. Martin and Anne, the kindred spirits of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank. Again, one thing I like to ask before I start is for you all to think about these 2 faces on the cover. Now, on the surface, how different could these 2 faces be? I mean, seriously, what do they have in common? Why should they even be in the same book? Let's look at them. Okay, Their skins, different color. They are different genders. As we learn more about them, we'll find they're different religions. One is Christian, one is Jewish. We're going to find out they're from different countries, that they spoke different languages. So what could these two possibly have in common? Why should they even be in the same book? And that's the question I'm hoping will be answered by this book. The other thing I want to read before we start is the dedication, because I'm going to come back to it. And we can talk about why it's dedicated in this way. It's dedicated for those whose lives were cut short everywhere, including Bialystok, June 27, 1941. It's kind of a specific dedication, isn't it? Your memory is a blessing. Love lives on. Let's come back to that at the end, all right? Martin and Anne, the kindred spirits of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank. Now remember, I'm not going to actually read the book. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to show you the pictures. See the very first spread? This is called, in a picture book, this is called a spread when you see the two pages together. Look at these two families, okay? One is Dr. King's family, and here is Anne Frank's family. They were born in the same year, 1929. Oh. So that's the first thing they have in common, the same year. And we're going to go back to that too, because what else was happening in the world in 1929? You know what? That was the year of the stock market crash, the Great Depression. People are scared. A lot of people are out of work. They don't have enough to eat. And let's look at something else. Now, remember, their faces, their skins, different color, right? Different races. But are you starting to see a certain similarity? Look at that. Two babies, two beautiful babies born to families who are so happy to have these beautiful babies in their families. Look at what Yevgenia did. We can see how similar these loving families are, even though they're across the ocean, even though they seem different superficially. What Yevgenia is doing is showing you the feelings, how similar the feelings are. You can feel the love in the room in each of these families, can't you? Can you feel the warmth of those pictures, the love in the room? But what we're soon going to find out was once these two children go out into the world is not as loving as their families have been. So again, she sets up parallel pictures. This is Martin. This is Anne. Here in America, Martin is being told he can't go to the same school as his friends. And his friends are no longer willing to play with him. Why? Because of the color of his skin. And Anne is finding out she is born in Germany and they moved to Holland after Hitler takes charge of Germany. And she's been told she's not welcome in her school. And her friends won't play with her. Why? Because she's Jewish. So they give different reasons, but it's the same feeling, right? That feeling of exclusion. Some people are not welcome. Some people don't have the same rights as others. And again, look at what Yevgenia has done. Look at the expression in Martin's face. Look at the expression in Anne's face. And think about how you would feel if you were told you couldn't go to your school and your friends wouldn't play with you because of the color of your skin or because of your family's religion or for any other reason you want to substitute. And as we go on, they're getting a little bit older. And Martin is seeing whites-only signs everywhere. All of a sudden, he can't go to public parks, swimming pools, or restaurants. And Anne, look, she's being forced to wear a yellow star to let everyone know she's Jewish. And all of a sudden, she's being told she can't buy ice cream or go to a movie. Oh, and Anne loves movies. How would you feel if you were told you couldn't go to the same things that the other children can? And let's look at their faces now. And again, look at what Yevgenia has done with his art. Martin is looking and Anne is looking. It's almost as if they're looking at each other. Even though they've never met, they're across the oceans. Do you know what? They're the same age and they're experiencing that same feeling of exclusion. And you know what? We're going to come back to this. Nazis burned books by Jewish authors. So we're going from maybe feeling sad to maybe feeling, what do you think, scared? I'd be pretty scared if this was happening to me. So what can they do about that? Here's the question, what can they do? You know what? They're not rich, they're not famous, their families aren't running countries, they're not kings or queens. What can they do? You know what they can do? They can use their words to articulate their vision of a better world, a fairer world. Martin starts writing speeches, using his words to write speeches about black and white children playing together in harmony. Anne uses her words to write in a diary, talking about how beautiful the world can be. People are kind to each other, about how simple acts of kindness could transform the world. And as they grow older, Martin goes to school, he graduates from college, he decides to become a minister, to lead his people, to stand up for justice. What is he holding in his hands? Paper on which he's written words with his great ideas about how the world could be better. Anne has to hide in an attic because in Nazi Germany, and those rules extended to Holland where she is now, it was a crime to be Jewish. She had to hide in an attic, but she wrote in her diary about her dreams for a better world, a world where people are good. And you know what? No matter what, despite what was happening, she did believe, and she wrote that she believed people were truly good at heart. Now, Martin grows older, right? And he wanted to lead his people to stand up for justice. Well, when Rosa Parks is arrested for refusing to give up her bus seat, he tells everyone, don't you ride those buses until everybody is treated fairly. And look, he's leading these marches. What do you see on these signs? You see words. Now let's think about it. What are words anyway? Words, you can't eat them, you can't taste them, you can't smell them, you can't wear them, you can't put them in the bank. They're not going to earn interest for you. But what can you do with words? You can put them on signs. You can use them to make speeches. And you know what? Martin's words give people courage and strength. Think about that. Can words make you brave and strong? Can they change the way you think of the world? Can they make you think of the way the world could be different, better? Now, while Martin is growing older, Anne's 15th year is her last. The Nazis storm Anne's hiding place. Look at what happens now. I want you to take a good look at this picture. This picture that Yevgenia neighbor painted. She did such an interesting thing. The Nazis came and they arrested Anne and her family. They took her to a concentration camp. Yevgenia did not draw pictures of people. You do not see Anne in this picture. What do you see? Let's take a minute to look at that picture. You see, do these look like storm clouds, maybe? Does that look like a lightning bolt? She is creating a picture that gives you feelings, doesn't she? Look at the house. Is the house big and strong? Does that make you feel safe? This house is very small compared to those storm clouds. And look, it's askew. It's not steady. It looks like it could fall over. There's light in it. For all of you Harry Potter fans out there, it made me think of Voldemort casting a horrible spell. And I have to tell you, I presented this book at Venus Middle School in Venus, Texas. And you know what the students there told me? They said this storm cloud with a lightning bolt to them looked like a broken heart. Once they said that, I could never unsee that. And here are the pages from her diary, all scattered around. What's to become of her words? We talked about words that can give people courage and strength, but what's happening to Anne's words? Are they gone forever? Guess what? Remember I said Anne believed in the power of simple acts of kindness? Let's come back to that, because kindness is going to change something for Anne and for us, and you and me. Martin grows older. He wins the Nobel Peace Prize when he's 35. He works with President Lyndon Johnson to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Those whites only signs, thing of the past, finally. I wish I could give you happier news about Anne, but she dies in the camps along with her older sister. But remember I told you about those simple acts of kindness? They had a family friend named Meep Geese who had helped Anne and her family hide. She had tried to keep her safe. She had tried to give Anne and the family food. When the Nazis came, she tried to protect Anne, but she couldn't save her when the Nazis came. But you know what she did save? Remember all those pieces of paper that scattered on the floor? Meep Geese gathered up all of those papers. She saved them. She put them in a drawer. She was hoping with all her heart to be able to give them to Anne when Anne came home. But of course, Anne never came home. But her father came home. Her father was the only one to survive the camps, the only one of the family to survive the camps. And what her father did, he had her book published. The book was published and it became a sensation, a bestseller. Actors performed it. That's why I said we benefited from that act of kindness, because Meep Geese saved those pages, gave them to her father. Her father had them published. That's how we have the benefit of knowing of Anne's great words, her vision of a world where people are kind, her belief that people are truly good at heart, her words that encourage us to be good and to do the right thing. And the words and those cramped rooms where she wrote those words, they are now a museum. If you ever get the chance to go to Amsterdam, you can go to those rooms and see where Anne and her family hid, where she wrote those words. Martin was only 39 when a man who believed that Black people didn't deserve the same rights as white people shot and killed him. But no one could kill the way Martin inspired others. Just as Anne's words will never die. And do you know what? One of the things Anne wrote in her diary is she said, I want to go on living even after my death. And through her words, she has. And you know what? Here's something else I want to share with you. Terrible things have happened in the world. We have lived through, those of us who have survived a terrible pandemic have seen people we love pass on. One thing I've learned from writing this book, from studying Martin and Anne, is that people only die when they are forgotten. As long as we remember their words, the kind things they have done, the wisdom they have passed on, they continue to live through those words and memories. That is why we study history. That is why we write and read books, so those people, their spirits will stay with us in our hearts. So Martin and Anne, remember we talked about two people who seem to be as different as can be? But they were born in different places, but you know they shared the same dream, that one day all babies would be seen as beautiful, as all babies are, as each and every one of you is, as all of us are. Love is stronger than hate. Kindness can heal the world. I hope when you think about this book, you'll think about all that these two had in common. They look so different on the outside, don't they? But where are they the same? In their hopes, their dreams, the way they use words, their belief that people are good at heart, their belief that we all need to treat people with dignity and respect, that everybody deserves equal rights. equal opportunities. So where are they the same? They're the same where we are all the same, inside, in our hearts. I would like to share a couple of other things with you before we welcome some questions. I know there's some really good questions waiting for me. I want to share with you something special that happened. Just yesterday, I received the Braille edition of Martin and Anne. This makes me so happy that now kids who are blind and visually impaired have the same opportunity to read Martin and Anne. This is produced by the National Braille Press, a wonderful organization that has dedicated itself to making books available to the blind and visually impaired. This is their book of the month in their Book of the Month Club for Children. It's not only Jewish people who were discriminated against and were killed in the Nazi concentration camps. There were also people who resisted. There were people with special needs, the people who were blind, people who were deaf. So many people, anybody who didn't fit this narrow vision of what they wanted in Nazi Germany were slated for death camps. And so it makes it so meaningful to me that this is now available in Braille. Another thing I wanted to say, again, before we go to the questions, is another thing I had the honor to do is to share this book, co-presented with the Anne Frank Center for Mutual Respect in New York. And independently of me, they created an amazing play because independently of me, they saw the same parallels. And their play is called Letters from Anne and Martin. And if you ever have a chance to see this play, I recommend it. They have two actors, one playing Anne, one playing Martin, and all of their words are the actual words of Anne Frank from the diary and of Martin from the letter from a Birmingham jail. And here's one expression, one excerpt from the letter from Birmingham jail I want to share with you today. And that excerpt is Martin, Dr. King, who was fighting injustice, talks about how sometimes there will be laws that are unfair, that are unjust. Segregation was the law of the land here in America. Segregation, separation of the races, that Black people had fewer rights than white people. It was the law of the land that Black people couldn't marry white people. If you had a marriage like that, both people would be thrown in jail, and this happened. And as a matter of fact, there's a book called Hitler's American Model about how Hitler sent his lawyers to the Jim Crow South to study our segregation laws and to use them as a model for the Nuremberg laws, and substituted Jewish people for Black people. Same wording, same discrimination. Okay, in the letter from Birmingham jail, Dr. King talks about how we have to think for ourselves, how we have to follow a higher law, how we have to always protect and the others and make sure everyone has equal rights. And he says, these are his words. He said, if I had been in Hitler Germany, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers. And I'll add my Jewish brothers and sisters. He said, my Jewish brothers. Think about that. I always like to ask, well, what did he mean by his Jewish brothers? Wasn't he a Christian minister? Did he have Jewish brothers and sisters? And when I ask this question, the very wise children usually say, he meant we are all brothers and sisters. We are one human family. And that's true, isn't it? I ask all of you out there, how many of you have brothers and sisters? Feel free to raise your hands if you've got brothers and sisters out there. And if you've got brothers and sisters, are you exactly the same as your brothers and sisters? Do you like all the same foods? Do you have the same hobbies? Do you have the same personalities? And now, moment of truth, how many of you fight with your brothers and sisters? How many of you get so mad you want to throttle them sometimes? And I'll raise my hands here because I grew up and I was a kid and I got so mad at my brothers and sisters sometimes for ridiculous things. But you get mad, right? And you're fighting for your parents' attention. But how many of you, if somebody else picked on one of your brothers and sisters, would you stand up for them? I sure would. I wouldn't let anyone pick on my brothers or sister. And this is Dr. King's point. This is Anne Frank's point. We are all brothers and sisters. If you see anybody picking on anybody for any reason, there is never a good reason. There is no good reason to discriminate against anybody. You stand up for your brothers and sisters. That's the higher law we follow. Dr. King said, an injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So you substitute any group for the groups we were talking about here. It's always wrong, and it's always a playbook. It's always separate people, give some people more rights than others, forbid marriages between two people who love each other for any reason. It is always wrong. And we always need to stand up. And Dr. King also said the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But you know what? It only bends. We have to help it bend. Final thought. I always have a final thought. And you may say, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. Some of you are kids listening to this. You say, what can I do? The world is big and there are so many problems. What can I do? And here's the thing. Who are Martin and Anne? Were they rich? Were they kings? Were they queens? What was their power? What gave them any power at all? It was the quality of their thoughts. It was the power of their hearts. It was their willingness to put those ideas into words and share them with us. Dr. King led protest marches, peaceful ones. Anne never got to do that, but her words have inspired people to act for justice. So, and we all have that power. You can be writing words. You can be standing up. You can be standing up for someone else. You can simply be kind. You can lift somebody's spirits. That each light might be a little light, but all those lights add up and they make a great light. So I invite you. I hope that Martin and Anne will inspire you to add your light so that all our lights can add together to make a great light and to move us towards justice. Thank you so much. I welcome your questions, and don't forget to ask me about that dedication and the project, the Kindred Spirits Project. But let's take a little time for your questions.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Why did you write the book?
Well, why did I write the book? It's such a great question. I wrote the book in 2017 while a book to come out because it takes a while for these wonderful illustrators like Yevgenia neighbor to draw all her illustrations. I wrote in 2017 because I saw so many hate crimes. I saw crimes against people for their race, for their religion, for immigrants, for sexual orientation, for all these reasons. And it made me so sad. It made me so sad. And I thought we'd made so much progress, and it feels like the human race is going backwards. And I thought to myself, I need hope. I need hope. And I thought, who had hope in really dark times? And I immediately thought of Dr. King, and I thought of Anne Frank, who never gave up. Look what they faced. Look at the hate that they faced, and they never gave up on the human race and our ability to do better and to be better and to create a better world. And then as I read their words and I read about them, I just noticed, it just leapt out at me that they were both born in the same year, 1929. And it was as if a light bulb went off. What was going on in 1929? And I just started to see so many parallels. I got a piece of paper and I started writing down what was happening when they went to their first school, what was happening when they were growing up, what was happening, and how did they deal with that, the horrible things that were happening, how they both used their words. It's just the parallels just kept throwing themselves at me, and I felt compelled to share the story. this story gave me hope because I saw how they never gave up hope. It gave me hope how we can all make a difference because, again, they made a difference just by the power of their ideas and how they wrote them down, how they articulated them. And it was my hope that this book would give others hope and that empower us all to make a difference. Kind of a long answer to your question. I hope you don't mind my long-winded answers.
Nancy, I would love to know, with all of the opportunities you've had to talk to kids and to people about the book, have you seen any examples of sort of that light bulb moment that you talk about where people have sort of an awakening? Or what sort of other positive results have you seen from the book?
Absolutely, Laura. And one thing I create with all my books, I always have a project because it's my goal that the experience of the book will not end with the last page, but that children reading the book will want to be the heroes and heroines of their own lives. The project for Martin and Ann is the Kindred Spirits Project. And the idea for the Kindred Spirits Project is for kids to, in a classroom, let's say in a school, to reach out and connect with kids in another school, maybe in another neighborhood, city, state, country, another group that seems different on the outside where they can help each other celebrate what they have in common. And the first school to take me up on this was South Georgia Elementary in Amarillo, Texas. And they were thinking about what school they should partner up with. Now, remember, I wrote this book because I was so distressed about all the hate crimes I was seeing. Well, in 2019, there was a terrible hate crime where a man shot at immigrant families in El Paso, Texas, killing people. Well, these kids in Amarillo heard about that. They said, because originally they were thinking, oh, we'll go to another state, this and that. They said, no, we're going to partner with a school in El Paso, Texas. We're going to let those kids know they are loved. They are part of our family. They sent those kids books. They shared worksheets. They Skyped together and they became friends. Can you imagine how it lifted up those kids in Amarillo, Texas? In El Paso, but also the kids in Amarillo. And they really made a difference, those kindred spirits. There's another school I want to mention that I admire so much. The Oak Hill Academy School in Dallas, Texas is a school that has their students have special needs. Many of them are on the spectrum. Wonderful kids, terrific school. And you may say, how I say everybody can make a difference. You may think, oh, she's telling us about a school that specializes with kids' special needs. So you're about to tell me about how kids help them. Oh, no, these kids wanted to help others. And they found out about homeless kids served by the Vogel Alcove. The Vogel Alcove is a wonderful organization in Dallas that gives homeless kids a place to stay during the day while their parents are at work because they don't have homes to stay in. And then the parents pick them up at the end of the day, take them to the shelters to sleep. So the kids at Oak Hill Academy said to themselves, I bet these kids don't have treats. They need encouraging words. They collected food, treats, stickers, books, little toys, put them all in paper bags, decorated the paper bags with inspirational sayings, saying the light will come, keep on, having faith. And they rented a bus, they drove it to the Vogel Alcove and delivered all of these bags. Can you imagine? Those kids are heroes. Everybody can make a difference. You just have to have the idea and the will. Thank you for that great question.
Hey, so Nancy, I've got one. First of all, I want to thank David and Susan because they've given a possibility through AIR4arts and through this wonderful room you're in and in this virtual environment to, during this pandemic time and during this crazy time, to have your voice, your book, and Martin and Ann gifted to the world. So thank you guys for doing exactly what Martin and Ann did. I love that so much. You said that you were going to go back to the beginning of the book and talk about the, so I'm dying because I don't know this answer.
Okay, Tony, you're amazing. This woman never forgets anything. It's like a steel trap. You misses nothing. You miss nothing. This is very personal to me. So let me go back to that dedication. For those whose lives were cut short everywhere. And that also refers to all the people who have died of hate crimes everywhere, for whatever reason. For those whose lives were cut short everywhere, including the alley stop, June 27th, 1941. Your memory is a blessing. Love lives on. Well, the alley stop, Poland, June 27th, 1941. The Nazis marched through that village on their way to Russia. They marched through and they killed the Jewish people who lived there. And among those people that they killed, my grandfather's mother, his brothers, two of his brothers, and their families, and the rest of the community. If my grandfather had not escaped to America, I would not be here presenting this book to you today. I never got to meet my great-grandmother, Sarah, and my uncles, my great-uncles, Yussel and Belleville. I never got to meet them or their families. I wanted them to have a book to live in because, as I said earlier, as long as we remember people, they are still with us. People are only fully gone when you forget them. So I learned that wisdom from a friend of mine who lost her son way too young. I mean, he was in his 20s and she lost him. And I remember being afraid to ask her about him because I thought it would make her too sad. And she straightened me out. She said, no, what makes me sad would be not to talk about him, because if I stop talking about him, it'll be as if he wasn't here. So yes, I'm sorry I lost him, but I want to talk about him. And I wanted to have a book for my grandfather's mother and my great uncles to live in. I would like to say one more thing too about this. Remember that line about how Nazis burned books by Jewish authors? And if they had prevailed, this book would have been burned too. And you would not be reading, I would not be sharing this with you today, because this is a book by a Jewish author. Thank you, Tony, for asking me about that.
Nice.
And thank you also for all you do. Tony shared with me that she played Anne Frank in the Diary of Anne Frank and took that part to her heart so much, researched it so deeply that she herself went to Amsterdam and was in Anne Frank's house and could feel her presence there. And thank you for the gift of sharing that and for making it possible, building this beautiful room where we can share stories and keep spirits and hearts alive and hope alive for the future.
Nancy, I have no words. Thank you. And it has been such a pleasure. Wow. Here to discuss Martin and Anne, your insights, your personal stories, and all fabulous questions. And truly, on behalf of AIR4arts, thank you. We appreciate you. And we are excited and looking forward eagerly to your next presentation in March, and which will be the William, can't even talk, you see, the William Hoy story, How a Deaf Baseball Changed the Game. And this is, we are really excited about this book as well. And actually the timing and why this book was chosen, because from March 15th to April 15th is National Deaf Month, as well as the start of baseball season in April. So wonderful timing. And I'd like to mention Nancy's books are available, and let me give you a few locations where they are. Here in the Dallas area, Interbang Books, Barnes & Noble, of course, that's not just Dallas, nationwide, all over, and of course, Amazon, Nancy's Publishers, which are Learner's Books for Martin and Anne, And as Nancy mentioned, the Martin and Ann is available in Braille and through the National Braille Press. So please check, if you're interested, please check those different websites and order. Again, Nancy, thank you. And thank you all. Matthew, thank you. Laura, thank you. Tony, fabulous. And Dave, love you all. Thank you.